The New York Giants offense took center stage in the team's 34-25 win over the Buffalo Bills. We'll dive into the takeaways coming up next here on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all of my written work. And as always, we welcome on in our Blue Crew community members, our everydayers, our newcomers, and everybody in between. And we thank you for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And we're actually coming to you with a special edition today. The New York Giants open their preseason, their 2025 preseason up at Buffalo, coming away with a very impressive looking 34-25 victory. So on today's show, we're going to break it down. We're going to take a look at the play of the offense, which was really pretty much the star of the game, in my opinion. So we'll break down some of, a lot of good stuff from the offense, and also, just some things they still need to clean up. Then we'll take a look at the defensive side of the ball. I know a lot of people had questions about the pass rush, the run defense. So we'll take a look at that. And then we're going to take a look at kind of like a big picture, how the Giants can build on what they accomplish against Buffalo. Because, look, some people are like, oh, it's just preseason. It doesn't mean anything. Well, in the standings, no, it doesn't mean anything. But there are intangibles that do mean something to this team, this Giants team. And we're going to talk about all that here on the Locked On Giants podcast. We got a lot to cover, so let's jump right in. All right, we're going to start off with the offense. Ladies and gentlemen, if you saw the game, if you followed the game, this is what competent offensive line play looks like. This is what competent quarterback play looks like. The Giants quarterbacks were solid. All right. I'm going to start there because, obviously a lot of people are going to ask about Jackson Dart. The Giants quarterbacks averaged 6.21 yards per pass attempt. That was better than what they averaged last year. All right. The Giants just really very good with the passing game. And a lot of that, I think you can point to the offensive line. Now, I'll get into the individual quarterbacks in just a moment, but I do want to talk about the offensive line. 0 sacks allowed and only 10 quarterback pressures unofficially per Pro Football Focus allowed. All right. When was the last time a Giants offensive line pitched a shutout? And I'm not talking just the starting unit, which played one drive, a 12-play drive to open up the game. I'm talking about first team, second team, third team, and everybody in between. 0 sacks allowed. Only 10 quarterback pressures on 51 dropbacks. That's not bad, folks. Not bad for a preseason opener. Now, let's talk about the quarterbacks just real quick. Each quarterback led a scoring drive, right? Russell Wilson, who got the start, and if you watch my shows this past week, I told you that there might be a chance that he gets like a series or two. I kind of knew that was how it was going based on what Brian Dable had told us. But Russell Wilson, the only one not to get a touchdown, he did leave the opening drive, and they scored a field goal. It was a 12-play drive. Unfortunately, it got hijacked, if you will, by penalties. There were 2 penalties, including 1 false start, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But overall, the quarterbacks really look good. Jameis Winston, actually the order was Russell Wilson, Jackson Dart played the biggest chunk of the game. Then he was followed by Jameis Winston, and then Tommy DeVito finished it up. So the other thing you need to know about the offense, out of their 12 possessions in this game, 4 of them went for 10 or more plays. Again, when was the last time the Giants had that? I know it's preseason. Don't get too excited about, preseason, but you got guys on the other side of the ball that are trying to earn roster spots. So, the fact that the Giants were so efficient on offense, not a whole lot of mistakes, had a couple of drop passes, a few missed assignments here and there, but nothing that really, I think, sabotaged them, except maybe for that first drive, like I said, with Russell Wilson, where they had a couple penalties that pushed them back out of the red zone. So overall, really, really looked good. Speaking of penalties, um, out of the I think the Giants had 10 penalties. 4 of them were pre-snap. So that has to get cleaned up. They had 2 false starts, 1 delay, 1 illegal formation. Matter of fact, on one of the pre-snap penalties, one of the false starts by tight end Thomas Fidone, he got pulled off the field by the coaches. The other false start was James Hudson, the left tackle. I don't think he got pulled off the field, but I have to go back and look at the tape. I don't remember him coming off the field, but Giants got to get that cleaned up because, like I said, there were 2 penalties. At least one of the penalties on that first drive pushed them back. So that has got to get cleaned up. All right, now let's talk about Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart showing shades of Eli Manning in terms of calm, cool, and effectiveness. All right. Now, I know some of you are going to say, how dare you compare a rookie to Eli Manning? I'm just talking about the traits, the vibe that he gave. Jackson Dart, 12 of 19, 154 yards, and 8.1 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown. I don't remember the last time a quarterback on the Giants threw an average of 8.0 or better yards per attempt. And this was without, by the way, Malik Neighbors, who was held out. Darius Slayton was held out. And Jalen Hyatt was a surprise scratch. He was held out due to a medical issue. I'm not sure what that was about, but that was kind of as a surprise. I didn't see that coming. So just imagine what the Giant quarterbacks could have done if Malik Neighbors is in the lineup, if Darius Slayton is in the lineup, heck, even if Jalen Hyatt is in the lineup. I suspect the numbers would have been a lot better than what they were, and they weren't that bad in this game. So kudos to the quarterbacks. I mentioned 0 turnovers. There were 2 close shaves, if you will, on the turnover department, including an interception that Jameis Winston threw that was nullified by a penalty on Bills. Tyrone Tracy had a little trouble handling the ball early in the game, but he was ruled down, so that was good. That's something he's got to continue to clean up. You can't have the shaky ball security from the running backs, especially from Tyrone Tracy. So, yeah, those were some of the negatives. Just overall, again, just going back to Jackson Dart, I thought he made good decisions with the ball. There were maybe 2 passes that I counted where maybe the throw was a little bit off, but again, cool, calm, just really did well with the ball in his hands. He had a very positive debut, and Brian Dable after the game echoed that. He was very, pleased with what he saw with the rookie. Now, of course, you sit down and you look at the film and you find little things that you want to clean up, but it wasn't a catastrophe. It was a very, very positive first game for Jackson Dart, who had his family up there actually to see his NFL debut. So did a good job overall, as did the offense. Again, we got to give kudos to the offensive line because, look, we've been bashing them. We've been calling them the weak link. And, hey, we should have listened to Abdul Carter because Abdul Carter this week told everybody, he said, look, the offensive line, they're not as bad as you think they are. And they showed it. Again, you just don't see an offensive line pitch a shutout. And I know the Bills didn't play all of their starters. I get it. But still, like I said, the guys on the other side of the ball, they've got to earn their place on the roster. And, the Giants offensive line, hat tip to those guys. They did really, really well in terms of protecting the quarterbacks, in terms of opening some holes on the run game. Just not a whole lot in terms of the run game, but overall, a good showing by the offensive line. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk about the defense, which overall, decent day. There were a few things mixed in there, but we will discuss all that right after this. Hey, Giant fans, most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth. whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all in one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy to use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart groupings of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Monarch makes it simple to review my finances with my husband. We can both see the budgets, the goals, and the spending activity all in one place. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. Again, that's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. Coming up this week, the Giants and Jets will have joint practices. The first one will be Tuesday in Florham Park. The next one on Wednesday at East Rutherford. Then the Giants should have, I think, another cards practice on Thursday. And the preseason game between the two will be on Saturday night. I think it's a 7 o'clock kickoff. And we, of course, here at the Locked On Giants podcast will continue to bring you updates, observations, shows, you name it, we'll have it for you here on the Locked On Giants podcast. So hope you'll tune in. All right, let's talk about the defense and their role in the 34-25 win over the Buffalo Bills. All right, a lot of people, myself included, were curious about the run defense, which was a problem for the Giants last year. The Giants allowed 3.9 yards per carry against the run. All right. The Bills really didn't run a whole lot in this game. They ran 15 times and had 58 yards, but they also had two long runs of 14 and 11 yards. But here's what really, kind of was alarming a little bit. The Giants defense had 14 missed tackles total per Pro Football Focus. 8 of them came in against the run. So there's still some cleaning up to be done there. I don't want to say I'm panicked about the run defense yet. I keep saying that, outside of Dexter Lawrence, nobody's really kind of stepped up and showed that they can, be a formidable opponent against the run. But it's still a work in progress, that unit. I mean, there's no other way to put it. When you have only 8 stops against the run and only 2 of them are by defensive linemen, you got some work to do, I would say, in the run defense. So that was kind of a little downer, if you will. All right, but let's see what else we got. Okay, the pass rush. The Giants had 18 total pressures, 2 sacks. I know a lot of you are going to ask about Abdul Carter. Abdul Carter, 3 quarterback pressures. Okay. He had 3 pass rush snaps. So he was getting in on a pressure on every one of his pass rush snaps. He only played, I think, about 6 snaps on defense, if I have my numbers correct. But according to Pro Football Focus, Abdul Carter finished with an 81.9 pass rush grade, which was the best on the Giants defense in this game. So Carter made his presence felt. It wasn't as flashy maybe as Jackson Dart, who had a lot more snaps, but Abdul Carter did his thing, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so let's now talk about cornerbacks. Deonte Banks, who, as I said in my preview, had a golden opportunity to put an end to the competition for CB2 that is ongoing right now with Cordell Flott, who, by the way, Cordell Flott did not play in this game. He's nursing some kind of injury. What that injury is, I'm not sure, but Cordell Flott did not play. So you figure, okay, Deonte Banks has a golden opportunity because he got the entire first half to play, right? I don't think that was by accident. I think the Giant coaches really wanted to see Deonte Banks and if there was progress made. Now, one of the biggest problems I have seen with Deonte Banks' game in training camp, a lack of consistency. This young man, for whatever the reason, doesn't turn his head around every time. Okay. So if the ball is in flight, turn your head around, look for it so you're not going to get flagged for, DPI. Now, we didn't get flagged for any penalties in this week's game, but there was one long pass. I think it was a 58-yarder from Mitchell Trubisky to Shavers, I think it was. And that was towards the end of the second quarter. I think, and I'm not sure 100% who was at fault, if it was Deontay Banks or if it was the safety Dane Belton. It looked to me like it might have been Banks because, again, you're chasing after the receiver, and if you're not adjusting based on what you see the receiver do, like for example, if the receiver is slowing down a little bit, you got to know that the ball is pretty close. So turn around and look for it. That play set up a Bills score. All right. So Deontay Banks, and here's the other thing with him. When he gives up a play, he gets frustrated with himself. And you can kind of see him I don't want to call it a temper tantrum, but he gets flustered and frustrated. And, I get it. The guy's competitive, but you also have to say, okay, you know what? I messed up on that play. I'm going to flush it. I'm going to move on to the next play. You can't let that rattle you for the subsequent plays that you're going to have. And I just think that that's Banks's biggest problem right now. He loses his confidence when he doesn't, make a play or when he gets burned. And that is worrisome because, I've had many quarterbacks in the NFL tell me, you've got to have a short memory. You've got to forget the previous play, whether it was good or bad, and move on, because if you don't, you're going to self-sabotage yourself. So that's what I kind of saw with Deontay Banks. I don't think the competition with Cordell Flott, even though Flott has been sidelined, that competition isn't over. So I was hoping it would be, but I think we still are going to see more of it. Now, whether Flott gets back on the field, I don't know, but it's a problem. Okay. All right. The other thing on the defense, and I mentioned it before, they got to clean up the missed tackles. Now, I guess I could give them a pass here because, look, in training camp, they haven't been tackling to the ground. They've been doing thudding, all right, which is basically you hit the guy and that's it. You don't bring him down to the ground. So with that said, I mean, the Bills also had double-digit missed tackles. I'm not going to panic just yet about the missed tackles. If it continues, then I think we have reason to worry. But I'm going to give them a pass on this one because it didn't really hurt them in the end result, but it's something that needs to be cleaned up. Now, maybe this week against the Jets, maybe we will see legitimate tackling instead of the thumping, or the thudding rather. I don't know what the plan is. I will let you know when I see it, when I get out to the practices. But really, that was, I think, the biggest thing with the defense. That, and like I said, the run defense. There were a couple of long runs that just, shouldn't have happened. All right, coming up next, some final thoughts on the Giants. Basically, what can they build on? Where do they go from here? Yes, it's just one preseason win. It doesn't count in the standings, but there was a lot of good that they can take away and they can build up on. And I'll talk about that right after this. Hey, Giant fans, time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this is a hole-in-one for your energy gain. Let's be honest, you know that there are some days that no matter what you're doing, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and stay energized. The grape, ginger, lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without having to chase down the beverage cart. And right now through September 30th, when you use my promo code LOCKEDONGOLF at 5hourenergy.com today, again, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, you will receive 20% off on one order. Again, this offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions, nor can it be used for subscription orders. So that promo code, Locked On Golf at 5, the number 5, ourenergy.com. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And the Giants, 34-25. Wow. I know it's preseason, but still, this is the first time in the preseason, in the Brian Daboll era, that the Giants cracked 30 points. So you'd like to think that maybe the arrow's pointing up with this team. Now, there's still a lot of football left to be played this summer. And then, of course, we will see what happens when the games start counting for real, but certainly a lot to be encouraged by from this weekend's performance. All right, so let's talk about a few miscellaneous things. For those of you who maybe are of the negative mindset and they say, well, it was the preseason, Josh Allen didn't play, the Bills didn't play a lot of their starters. All right, I get it, but look, you take baby steps. Remember, the Giants last year, 3-14, a franchise worst record. They have to learn how to win. They brought in a lot of guys, a lot of veterans, some guys with experience winning big games, aka Russell Wilson. They've got to take baby steps towards learning how to win. And I see this win against the Buffalo Bills, preseason notwithstanding, as a key baby step, because it's something that they could build off on. It's something they could feel good about. Yes, there were flaws in the game. Yes, there are things that have to be cleaned up, but this was a big first step. Now, going back to the offense, the Giants scored on their opening drive, which, as you all know, last year and the year before that, the Giants couldn't score coming out of the chute if their lives depended on it. They got off to slow starts. They scored on the opening drive. Now, yes, they had to settle for a field goal, but points are points. And it's also worth noting that the Giants scored points on 5 of their first 6 possessions. When was the last time we could say that? Probably maybe during the Colts game last year. And I mentioned that, it's funny, I mentioned that on X rather, and people were like, oh, it's only been a couple of games, because I didn't want to kind of ignore that game. But the point being is the Giants don't get a lot of good offensive play, or at least they haven't the last couple of years. So it was nice to see it in this preseason game. All right, another positive, no major injuries were known to have emerged from this game. D. Williams, the cornerback, left the game. It might have been cramping. I don't know, but Daboll's not going to tell us about injuries, I don't think, but nobody really got hurt that we know of. The guys that didn't play, some of them are still nursing stuff. I was disappointed that Evan Neal, for example, didn't play. He suddenly got hurt on Thursday, the Thursday before the Giants left for Buffalo, and he did not play. So that was a little bit disappointing. Hopefully, whatever he's got, he'll be back next week, because he really needs to get out there. I want to see how he looks playing in game snaps at guard. All right. Also, I want to see Jalen Hyatt, because Jalen Hyatt, he has been dealing with something, I guess something with the calf, I believe. So they held him out. Jalen Hyatt has been a player who has flashed during the preseason, looked pretty good, but then he kind of fades. And I know he's been working hard to boost up his game, but you got to get out there. You got to get out there. So we'll see how the injuries play out. But overall, again, folks, impressive game by the Giants. One last thing I want to mention real quick. One change that the Giants made that if you blinked and you missed it, they had offensive coordinator Mike Kafka, who was calling the plays. He was on the sideline, right? In the past, he's been in the press box. He has preferred to work in the press box. Now, I don't know if that was his decision, if, Brian Daboll told him to come down. It could be maybe that, with the rookie quarterback, they want to have him there so that he can communicate with him and not have to worry about the radio. And if the radio transmission goes out or anything like that, maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. But I was kind of glad that Mike Kafka was on the sideline. I think, I get the advantage of being up high in the press box. You could see things a lot differently than you can on the sideline. But you have a young quarterback and you kind of want to bring him along. And I think it's important to have all your coaches, your offensive coaches who are directly involved with Jackson Dart's development, that you have them on the sideline so he can go to them, find out, what happened on this play, or what should we have been looking for on this play. So that's just a little side note on to come out of this week's game. All right, Giant fans, that will do it for this edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, special edition. Now, we will be back on Monday with a new episode. Again, we are 5 days a week as we continue to bring you updates from training camp, which is still going on. And again, this week coming up, we've got the Jets joint practices. So I will have reports for you, and we'll just keep on rolling here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Hope you will join me. All right, before we say goodbye, for your next listen, be sure to check out Locked On Bets. Betting experts Lee Sterling and Kevin Rodgers have daily MLB locks and can't miss football futures. Find Locked On Bets on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, Giant fans, I will see you on Monday. Have a good rest of your weekend.